Hiya folks, really great to see you again this week on this week's Genos Live. And this week we're very excited to have a couple of colleagues from Genos Americas talking on a really practical topic of how if you apply and think about emotional intelligence correctly, it can have a dramatic impact on the productivity of absolutely every member of your team. So we're going to dive into that a couple of moments with Debbie Munno and Jeff Summers. But before we do this, let's start as we traditionally do. And I'm going to ask you, hey, pop something into the chat, just saying where it is you're dialing in from. And because the world has so much adverse news right now, why not tell us in there what is the best thing to happen with you this week? So why not give us a little bit of the sunshine from your world, and Aoife will share that when she comes on in a couple of moments. Now, as always, I'm going to do a quick advert. Those of you who are regular attenders of the Genos Live sessions, you know that this is just 30 seconds, and then after that it's all pure good content, no advertising. So let me give you a couple of seconds on it. First, Genos International are an emotional intelligence organization. We are a producer of emotional intelligence assessments and programs for developing emotional intelligence in leaders, individual contributors, and for helping people to deal with the challenges that come from the environment we live in right now. So we've a range of programs on resilience and dealing with worry and dealing with adversity. By way of boasting, let me tell you that we have been one of the top 20 assessment companies in the world for the last 5 years, according to trainingindustry.com. And we also certify people as practitioners to use everything that we produce. And that certification is approved by the ICF for continuing education credits if you happen to be an ICF coach. Now, one additional piece of advertising, which I think is really timely right now, one of the things we've got from people over the last couple of months, a lot of requests for, is can you help me help our leaders deal with the challenges of anxiety, of worry, and concern over everything that's been going on in the world, both with the pandemic and with the war in Europe, because more people are worrying about more things than ever before. And we put together a masterclass, done an awful lot of research, and put together a 90-minute masterclass that's designed specifically for that. So if you're in an organization where you really feel people are creaking and leaders and managers want to know how do they support their people, well, reach out to us. You can reach out to Aoife in the chat, or you can reach out to us afterwards in LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you happen to be watching this. So let me tell you about the next time on Genos Live, and this is quite something. Have you got a message that you want to share with the world? Have you, as I did a few years ago, got on your bucket list that you'd like to be a TEDx speaker? If you have, then week after next, the session we're having is the one that you really do not want to miss. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see 4 curators, 4 organizers of TEDx events come on and have a conversation about how do you approach people about becoming a TEDx speaker. And by the way, a month later, we're going to take one of these folks who are going to do a session on, once you've got your TEDx talk, how do you absolutely ace it? So this is one you don't want to miss. If you have any aspiration to become a TEDx speaker, really, seriously, don't miss that session. Now, it's not next week. It's week after next. You'll notice that there's a QR code down the very bottom of the screen for signing up for it. The reason it's not next week is I'm off walking the Camino for my sins, so I won't actually be here. So week after next is that session. Now, as you know, and as if you've been here before, we have about 6 or 7 months of sessions set up, and we really we have already had a who's who of speakers from the world of how one shows up effectively to get the best out of people on emotional intelligence, psychological safety, empathy, authenticity, etc. And coming up over the next couple of months, we have an awful lot more really top-end speakers. So if you want to get reminders week on week, register. Aoife's going to drop the link so that you can register, and we'll send you a link each week that says, here's what we're doing this week, and if it appeals to you and it's something that sounds that you want to get started with it, we'll bring we'll send you the reminder and you can sign up for it. So before we move on and we bring Debbie and Jeff in, because they are the stars of the show this week, let me bring in Aoife and say, hey Aoife, so what have we got? Is anybody sharing any sunshine from their side of the world with us?
Oh, lots of things making me smile, Derek.
Great.
And sorry, apologies for looking down now. It's a lot quicker and easier to look at the comments from my phone than to be looking on the screen here. So yeah, we have a lot of familiar faces back with us this week, and then a lot of new faces as well. David got a random referral from a happy client this week. That's some great news.
Good as it gets.
Candice, I think maybe her book posted on Amazon for pre-sale.
Whoa.
Congratulations, Candice. Joining
Share
us
a link,
from Illinois.
Candice. Share a link.
Yeah, do. Promote it. I share that my spirits have been lifted because the sun has been shining all week, which makes me very happy. We have folks dialing in from southern France, from Michigan. Leonardo's grandson is 1 year old today.
Birthday. Lovely. Congratulations. Happy birthday.
And Jen shared with us that she is raising a future guide dog who's doing a fantastic job learning new commands. One day we'll be able to help a blind person gain more freedom.
Thank you
for sharing that with us, Jen. Amazing work. Lots of good comments coming in from London, from Venezuela, South Dakota, from Kenya. They just we could stay here all day reading these. We might have to do that someday for a session.
Yeah, we might do.
A session focused on good news.
Wouldn't it be nice to just have people dial in and just share what's going on well in the world? Because every time you pick up the damn paper, excuse my language, every time you pick up the darn paper, it's nothing but blasted bad news. So it'd be lovely to do a session like that. I wonder would we get enough people to have an hour full of good news stories from everybody, an hour full of feel good.
Well, the two folks we have joining us today are definitely have probably some of the most contagious positive energy that I've ever experienced. Yeah. So we'll have a good session today. So folks, I'll be here behind the scenes monitoring the chat. Post in your questions for Jeff and Debbie. They're highly sought after speakers. I'll introduce them in a moment, but this is a great opportunity to ask them questions. So feed those in and I will bring them back to them towards the end of the session.
Okay, and a big drum roll. Dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 da. Off you go, Aoife, and introduce the stars of the show.
Hi, guys. Good to have you with us. How you doing today?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having us with us. This is like our best sign of the week. This is our feel good. We're sharing that we get to join you today. Thank you.
I love it. Well, listen, I know a lot of people on the call here today have had the pleasure of meeting with you either online or in person through the Genos community, but we do have some that have never met you before. So I'd just like to give a quick little introduction to who the wonderful Jeff and Debbie from Genos North America are. Derek and I've had the privilege of knowing them for, I think it's 20 years now for me anyway, probably longer for Derek. I met them when I was an eager little intern taking photos at a conference years and years back. And we're so grateful that every day that we still get to work with them. As I said, they have a really incredibly contagious energy and passion for emotional intelligence in everything that they do. They lead up our team in Genos in North America. And they shared with me that their fascination with emotional intelligence started long before they even knew its formal name. Debbie worked in television, has competed in gymnastics, and her and Jeff together have run multiple businesses over the years that has really taught them to address personally, manage and work to understand their own emotions and those of people around them, whether it be co-workers, clients, or colleagues. For Debbie, she says this was her informal EI education. And for Jeff, his passion with emotional intelligence kicked off in 1985 when he began his learning with reading pretty much every book he could get his hands on. In business, they've over 30 years of running successful organizations together, particularly in talent and psychometric assessment space. And they have built an incredible community of Genos practitioners and clients in North America. I know everyone in the chat will probably attest to it. So if you work with Jeff and Debbie, please feel free to post an emoji or a smiley face or anything like that. We're so lucky to have them with us today. And they are highly sought after speakers, trainers, and consultants, and our dear friends. So Derek is going to be interviewing them today, and I know they have a presentation ready for us as well.
Yeah, so the format today is we're going to bring Debbie on now in a moment, and she's going to spend about 30 minutes kind of giving you the core of the research and the work that they've done and what they put together. And then there's going to be an opportunity afterwards to ask them questions. And I'm hoping that that I'll be able to sit back and let you, who are the participants here, ask the questions, because this is your session. So I'm going to swap across to Debbie. Debbie, do you want to say any words about the session before I swap you formally across onto the presentation screen?
Well, I'm excited to be formally swapped, Derek, so thank you. But before you do that, yeah, we're really, really looking forward to talking about what Jeff's creative brain really started investigating, and then he pulled me into this discussion. It's really a paradigm shift. It's really looking at the same thing that all of us have been looking at within our organizations or our clients for years, but looking at it completely differently. And in that shift in perspective, there's a vast amount of opportunity and excitement. And so we're just really excited to kind of get this topic out there and then hear what everyone who's attending, what they think and what their thoughts are. And if this shifts their mindset or their paradigm in the lens in which we look at organizations and people in them at all. It'd be interesting.
Great, thank you, Debbie. And I have to say, I'm buzzed to see it because I've read some of the material, but I haven't had a chance to see it presented, and I'm much more of an observer than a reader, so excited to do it. So let's formally swap you. Ta-da! Okay, so we're going to go mute. Over to you, Debbie. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the swap, Derek. Yeah, Jeff and I have been talking about this and really crafted something that, from a titling standpoint, that we thought made the most sense. And it really is talking about your competitive advantage that's hiding in plain sight. Now, this is whether you are an individual or whether you're looking at your organization in total. And to get that started, I'd like to ask you to think about something that has nothing to do with your organization or your work, but has to do with something that we all partake in. Have a thought about the countless experiences that you've had dining out. It's no doubt that some of those experiences, if you think about your favorite place to go, the place where you go because it just feels good or you celebrate something, that's a spectacular experience. You probably tell other people about that. You might refer other people to that. I know someone on this session said that the sunshiny thing that happened today is that they got referred a piece of business from a happy client. This is what we do when we have great places to eat. We look forward to going back. We find reasons to go back. And basically, we've become a repeat customer and a fan. We might even ask for a particular server who we've connected with while we're at that very favorite restaurant. But there is no doubt that this place for you is memorable. So I hope you have all thought of one, and maybe now after today you'll make a plan to go. But then I'd like you to think about a place that just was an awful experience. And unfortunately, we've all had those. So if you think about some dining experience that was just really terrible, you probably also told a lot of people about that. You may have even taken to social media. We have all these platforms now like Yelp where you can post reviews. It's highly likely you're never going back. It's highly likely you're telling your friends and your family, don't go. And that experience was also memorable. Now, albeit for a completely different reason, but very memorable. Now, the last thing I'd like you to think about, and this is kind of going to set up what we're going to talk about today, is think about a place that was okay. Jeff and I have had this dialogue a lot. We'll go somewhere and he'll say, well, what do you think? And my answer, well, it was okay. So think about what happened when you went to that place that was okay. Wasn't spectacular and memorable. Wasn't awful and memorable. You probably didn't tell anybody about it. Probably not referring anybody to it. You're not going to go complain to the manager, likely. You're just going to kind of walk away quietly. It's not memorable at all. And if I asked you how you felt about it, you might say, I felt indifferent. Now, that's kind of the positioning that we like to put forth today. We like to talk about this notion of feeling indifferent, which is really having or showing absolutely just no interest or concern or feeling, being uninterested, being apathetic or unmoved. And by extension, this notion of indifference, which is really just lacking interest and enthusiasm. Now, we're going to take this notion and put it into our organizations. I'd like for us to start thinking about that. So in our organizations, or the organizations that we work with, there's a swath of staff. There is a group of leaders and contributors who are a lot like your spectacular dining experience. They are in and of themselves spectacular experiences on the right side of that curve. They're inspiring. They're empowering. But the reality is that most staff is average by definition. Most staff, most leaders, most people in an organization are average, falling into this kind of okay category. Now, what's troubling about that? Well, there's a lot of opportunity that's being overlooked. I'm going to share with you here just a couple quotes that I know that you've all seen on social media, but they certainly bear worth repeating because they frame this concept up really nicely. I know that you've seen this one where the CFO asks the CEO, hey, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? And the CEO says, hey, what happens if we don't and they stay? Did you know that companies with high engagement are 22% more profitable? They have customer retention rates that are 18% higher. Any of you on this call who are responsible for line items like this in your organization are always seeking ways to lift engagement because of things like customer retention that gets increased. And lastly, and this is at the heart of a lot of what we're seeing with the Great Resignation, 79% of employees leave because they don't feel appreciated. 79% of the people who leave an organization do so because they don't feel appreciated. This does not mean that they were treated poorly. This means that they experienced daily indifference. They just did not at all feel appreciated. So we're going to wrap all this together. Derek did a beautiful job at sharing with you who we are as an organization, where we're really focused on helping people to connect and communicate and collaborate more effectively. We used to talk about these as people skills that enhance our capabilities in the workplace and personally. Recently, we've read an article by Josh Burson, and he calls these power skills. And so I'm crediting Josh, but I am going to use that term because there is power in this ability to connect and communicate and collaborate with folks. We're grateful to be joining our colleagues at Genos Europe. You can see that Genos, our real purpose is that we have a local focus, but a global reach. And so again, I'm also really proud to share with you what Derek shared at the onset of this program. This just really makes us so proud that what we're sharing with you is instruments, assessments, training programs that are globally recognized and award-winning assessments. And this underpins, I think, the messaging that we'll share today. So I know that Ava posted for you. You've got some worksheets and some takeaway sheets from us. We're going to do kind of a truncated version of this in our shortened time today, but you'll be able to dig through those worksheets following this session to kind of get this feeling, I think, even more deeply. But just in the time that we have allotted today, I'd like you to take a quick pause and think about the very best person who you have ever worked for or with or around. Now, I'm hoping that I didn't even need to finish that question and that you all thought of somebody. These people really make quite an impression on us, right? They're memorable. So I'd like you to think about who they are. Grab a piece of scratch paper if you've got one around you, or if you printed off what Aoife shared with you, you'll see that there's a column there that says the word best. You can jot down this person's name. I'm not going to ask you for it. It's personal to you. If you're using a blank sheet of paper, just write their name down on that blank sheet of paper. And I'm going to ask you to consider this person and give them a rating from 1 to 10, where 10 is exceptional. Now, some of the things that you can use to kind of make that rating, you're going to see on your screen. So you can consider things like, when you were working with them, did they understand the impact that their behavior had on others? Or did they make you feel appreciated? Were they open and honest about their mistakes? Were they ethical? Did they manage their emotions effectively in difficult situations when things got tough? Did they praise other people? Did they recognize others' hard work and appreciation? These are the kinds of things, the framing up of that rating. So I'm thinking right now, you've probably already awarded some points between 1 and 10. where 10 is exceptional. If you're looking at that worksheet, you'll see these same things listed on your worksheet. And after this session, you can go back and actually rate each one of these individually if you'd like to dig deeper into that. But now that you've got a rating of 1 to 10, the next thing I'd like you to do is just write down on your sheet at least one word that describes how this person makes or made you feel, depending upon when you worked with them or for them. How'd they make you feel? And then lastly, how long ago did you work for them? Was it 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 56 years ago? All right, a final frame up for this very best person. Again, this is a 1 to 10 score where you're going to award them these points, where 10 is exceptional. But we want you to think about these 3 particular areas. Did this person, this very best person, make it easy for you to want to go the extra mile for them? Did they make you want to tell other people just how great it is to work with them? And did they have a positive impact on your mindset, on your well-being? Was that a positive and productive impact? So give them a score of 1 to 10. So what you should have on your sheet is a score of 1 to 10, a word at least that describes how they made you feel, how long ago you worked for them, and another score of 1 to 10 around these items of how what that felt like. All right, now we're going to quick repeat this exercise, but we're going to talk about a couple different people. So if you're using a blank sheet of paper, just start another column. And at the top of that column, write the worst person's name down who you ever worked for or with or around. Now, I know that I probably didn't finish that and you already had a couple people popping into mind. These people are also quite memorable, albeit for extremely different reasons. So write that person's name down. And now I'd like you to give them a score from 1 to 10, keeping in mind these same behaviors, these same statements when you go to make that rating. So thinking about things like, did they make you feel appreciated? Were they open and honest about their mistakes? Were they ethical? Did they recognize other people? Then write a word down that really accurately depicts how they made you feel. I hope it's not current. I hope it's not makes you feel. And then how long ago did you work for them? And our last 1 to 10 rating is going to be on these 3 following statements. So remember, this is where we're saying, hey, did this person make you want to go the extra mile for them? Did they make you want to tell other people about how great it was to work with them? Did they have a productive impact on your mindset and on your well-being? 1 to 10 score. And our final round of this exercise, now I want to have you think about somebody who was okay. That's how you would describe them. They were okay. They may have been a really good human being. But when you think about what it was like to work around them, it was okay. And once you have an okay person, give them a rating. Think about all these same things. Making you feel appreciated, being open and honest about mistakes, being ethical, managing their emotions effectively, recognizing others. How would you rate them on that 1 to 10 scale? And then write down at least one word that describes how they made or make, if it's current, make you feel. How long ago did you work for them? And our last piece of rounding out this exercise, and you know these questions now by heart, we're talking about, did they make you want to go the extra mile? Did they make you want to tell other people how great it was to work for them? Did they have a positive and productive impact on your mindset and your well-being? You're going to rate them between 1 and 10. Okay, now once you've done that, I'm going to have you set that worksheet aside. Don't let it get too far away because we're going to circle right back to it. And you might come up with a couple other things that you want to annotate to that worksheet or that blank sheet of paper. But I want to start talking about employee engagement because you might have noticed some of those questions that we asked at the end had to do with things like they made me want to go the extra mile. They had this positive impact on me. So it's important to talk about engagement because engagement is wound right around emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is wound right around engagement. They so heavily influence one another. And organizations always are looking to lift engagement. You might even have on your initiatives for your company or for your clients' organizations to do that very thing, to increase engagement. Jeff and I have been around assessments and talent management for a very long time. It's hard to say that number out loud, but we have never encountered an organization that said to us, no, you know what, Deb, I got a lot of pretty engaged people. I just don't need any more. It's okay if I have a few non-engaged people. I'm good with that. That has never happened. We always want to drive engagement because we know what comes from engagement. So we want to define it for you and show you directly how it connects to this notion of emotional intelligence and how that's going to wrap around to why indifference is so challenging. So engagement has two sides. From the employee side, it's the level of emotional attachment, right? We're talking about very human communicating, connecting, and collaborating. This emotional attachment an employees feel toward their place of work, toward their job role, toward their position in the company, their colleagues, the culture, and the effect that emotional attachment has on their well-being, on their productivity. So all of us every day basically make a choice when we step into our workspaces about how much of ourselves are we willing to give to our work efforts. Yet there's another side of this that's the employer's responsibility, right? So from that side, employee engagement has to do with what the employer is doing. What new measures and new initiatives are they putting in place to actively increase that level of positive emotional attachment that employees are feeling? Because they know when they do that positive emotional attachment is going to drive overall business success. That's going to drive productivity. That's going to drive profitability. And that is going to drive employees feeling a more strongly attached, positive attachment to the organization. It goes round and round in a positive way or in a negative way. So this is why it is two-sided. It's really important that it's intentional. Now, we're connecting engagement to emotional intelligence because every organization is after lifting engagement. One of the ways to do that is through emotional intelligence. And right now is a really interesting time period in the workplace. Emotional intelligence is viewed literally as one of the most critical abilities that anybody can possess. Much more so than, now this quotation says, soft skills and functional excellence. Now, they did a recent survey at the Australian Institute of Management where these participants nominated what they thought were the most crucial skills for leaders. And the number one nominated skill was emotional intelligence. And you'll see that right in the middle of your screen. The skills that followed that, communications, people management, coaching, and mentoring. Well, if you have higher emotional intelligence skills, you also have stronger communication skills, stronger people management skills, and you're more likely to converse with your colleagues and your teams in a way that's a coaching and a mentoring style. These skills are comfortably outdoing other things that used to be widely accepted, like business acumen and functional excellence. It's not even close. This is why these are power skills. Now, the demand is going to increase sixfold over the next 3 years. And you might think that that's just us here at Genos saying that because this is what we live and breathe, and we have emotional intelligence assessments, and we have programs that lift the demonstration of emotional intelligence with leaders and with staff. But it is not just us. You will find hundreds of articles and research papers like this one from Capgemini Research Institute, talking about emotional intelligence being the essential skill now that we're involved in so much and engaged in so much with artificial intelligence. You'll see the World Economic Forum predicting the top skills for 2020. They did this back in 2018. Boy, emotional intelligence is on that list. Now, I'll tell you, of the other 9 things on that list, at least 6 or 7 of them are also connected to emotional intelligence. Things like leadership and social influence and creativity and originality and initiative. Harvard Business Review, the rise of artificial intelligence is making emotional intelligence more important. In a field that's traditionally hard skills driven like accounting, this article is talking about accountants needing to brush up on soft skills if they're going to be competitive in their marketplaces. And when the World Economic Forum looked forth to 2024, of the emerging skills, of course, you see emotional intelligence on that list. Now, this has got 15 on it, so the remaining 14, you guessed it. So many of them are driven by having higher EI skills. And I'll call your attention on this list to several items in here: leadership and social influence, reasoning, problem solving, and ideation, persuasion and recognition. But look at number 7. Derek mentioned it at the onset of our session today: resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. Boy, I wonder where those things have come from given the last couple years that we have all been through around the world in our current circumstances. So why is it then that these skills become so critical? How do we hone them? And what do we do about our emotions? Well, I'm going to give you just a brief glimpse into how our human brains work. And this is just so fascinating around why spectacular performance is so crucial and why indifference doesn't really drive us in any direction. And why, as a human being, so many things come forth from how we feel. So the way that our brains work is really quite remarkable. All of us on this session today are descendants from our very nervous ancient ancestors. Our very nervous ancient ancestors really got messages and through their body that they responded to, that they paid attention to. Now, all of you might be aware that you've got something called an amygdala. We actually have two of them, one on each side of our brain. But most of us know this as our fear center or our fight or flight center. And this structure has just been passed on generation for generation. And its whole purpose is to keep us alive, which as a human being is a really good thing. This fear center, this amygdala, senses danger or foe long before our conscious mind is even aware of it. In less than a nanosecond, this structure in our brain sets off a chain of events that let us know if we're safe or not. And our very nervous ancient ancestors who paid attention to those signals in their body, especially when they weren't safe and they did something different, that's why we're all here today. People always ask me, well, what about the ones who weren't so nervous? Well, they didn't live long enough to propagate. The ones who paid attention to these messages from our body, which is such a gift, live to fight another day, literally. And so we don't have things that they had to deal with like saber-toothed tigers. We just have the modern day versions of them. Here are just a few. If you've ever gotten a text from your loved one that says, we need to talk, you know what that feeling feels like. Or if you're here in the States and you got a letter in the mailbox from the IRS, that can give you the same kind of feeling. Conversely, if your child does a homemade card for you and says, hey, mom, hey, dad, I love you, that gives you a whole different set of feelings. Now, those feelings are coming from chemicals in our bodies. Let me walk you through this quickly. Let's say that you're in a meeting and you put forth an idea because everybody's been asked for an idea, and someone on that team or in that meeting tells you, Debbie, your idea is stupid. My amygdala is going to perceive that in the same way that it would if a saber-toothed tiger were around the corner. If I were pulled over for speeding, right? If I got that letter from the IRS, a whole chemical process happens in our brains. Adrenaline begins pumping from our adrenal glands. Oxygen-rich blood leaves our brain and goes to our extremities. Why? Because the miracle of our bodies means that that makes us stronger. We can fight or flee. This is what keeps us alive. Now, if I'm in a meeting and somebody said my idea was stupid, here's the thing. My brain doesn't know the difference between my idea being called dumb or me fleeing for my life. The same set of biology happens in my body. And when I'm in that circuitry, we call that threat circuitry, that's not at all productive or useful. I feel really concerned, worried, and frustrated and stressed. And as a result of that, I'm really narrowed in my ability to problem solve or think clearly. It's kind of like that puts a blindfold on my thinking brain because I'm in survival mode. You might have experienced this if you ever had words with somebody and you thought of all of the smartest thing to say when it was 10 minutes later. It's because you were in threat circuitry at the time you couldn't do it. Now, let me go back to the other side. Let me go back in the meeting and let's say that we put forth an idea and Aoife said, hey, what about this? This is a little off the menu, but what about this idea? And everybody else on the team said, whoa, that really is out there. But I'll tell you something, that can work. That's really brilliant. That's going to launch us in the right direction. Way to go, Aoife. Now, in a nanosecond, Aoife's brain said, whoa, this is friendly. This is safe. And a different set of biology happened in her body. Things like oxytocin and dopamine begin flooding through her system. You know these as the feel-good hormones and the feel-good chemicals. Now, she probably feels pretty satisfied, very meaningful. She feels valued. She feels useful. And here's the great thing. When we're in that reward circuitry, we're actually smarter. We have this ability to learn more. We can learn more. We do learn more. We're at the height of our creativity. And man, are we engaged. Here's the point. whether we are in threat circuitry or reward circuitry. It's with that circuitry and that biology that we make all of our decisions, that all of our behavior comes from. Our body expressions, our facial expressions, our body language, our tonality. Do we type in all caps? So the way that we feel influences everything we do. And that is human biology. That is below conscious registry. We don't decide to do that. We react and respond to that as a human being. Now, here's the deal. We've been talking about the Great Resignation. I shared with you that 79% of the people leave their jobs because they don't feel appreciated. Well, you're either in threat circuitry or reward circuitry. If we're not intentionally using our emotions and the emotions of others to be in this productive zone where we can be productive and creative and engaged, if we're not there, then we're in threat circuitry. If we're not intentionally working toward helping people to feel valued and meaningful and useful, giving them the best opportunity to be the best at what they can be during the course of a workday, then we're hurting our own chances. And this is really at the essence of what emotional intelligence is. We are not thinking machines who feel. We are feeling machines who think. We like to believe that we are rational and logical and that we also have emotions. But the reality is we are feeling machines as human beings who also think. Now, that's not us saying that. This comes from Antonio Damasio, world-renowned neuroscientist. So when we are having those feelings, we know that having really productive feelings kind of broadens and builds as an effect on us. And unpleasant feelings narrow and limit our capacity to be effective. When we're experiencing unpleasant feelings, man, when we are uncertain, we make assumptions. Our brains hate uncertainty. We will fill in those gaps with something. And because humans are hardwired for the negative, because hardwiring for the negative keeps us alive, keeps us on the lookout, we make assumptions. When we're stressed, we get really reactive. When we are worried, we're really problem focused. And when we are fearful, man, we are really about blaming others. Yet when we're experiencing pleasant emotions, boy, when we feel purposeful, we're really inclined to engage with other people. And when we feel valued, we care for others. When we feel informed, we're very solution focused. And when we feel empowered, we are at the height of our ability to innovate. So just looking at these couple slides, I think you can get the sense that, boy, if we can harness this gift of our emotions and be more intelligent with them, the way we perceive and understand them in ourselves and in others, if we can harness that and be more productive with that, well, then that's really good for us and the people around us, both on a personal and a professional level. It helps us to be more productive. So if you look at your worksheets, if you look at those, if you had a blank sheet of paper, or if you did use the worksheet, I'm going to have you call those back now and take a look at your best. Now, the odds are that the best, you probably have scores on the first part that are like 8s, 9s, and 10s. And you may have written down words on the way this person made you feel, like appreciated, valued, part of, included, empowered. And when we asked you those questions about having this, going the extra mile and being, having a productive influence on your mindset and your well-being, it's likely that those scores were like 8, 9s, and 10s. These people were like a spectacular experience that we talked about. You probably tell other people how great it is to work for or with them. You might try to bring other people into that department with that individual. You look forward to returning to work. You're a fan. These people are memorable. Look at your worst. These people mirror probably that awful experience kind of feeling we talked about at the beginning with the dining experience. It is no doubt that you tell other people about this individual. We now have the opportunity to post on social media. This is where places like Glassdoor have become so crucial. So it's likely that there are posts like that that have been made. It's also likely that you're doing everything and anything to never return to that work environment and to discourage anybody else from stepping into that work environment. These spectacular people are memorable. These people at this end of the spectrum are also memorable for different reasons. But look about your okay person. And look at what those ratings were. I'm guessing that they're probably in that mid-range, like 4, 5, 6. When we asked you, how did that person make you feel? You might have had a hard time writing something down. Did they make you want to go the extra mile for them or have a productive impact on your mindset and well-being? Maybe 4, 5, 6, right? So these people, we don't actually tell anyone about them one way or the other. And we don't have a compelling reason to stay working with them. So when we leave, we tend to leave quietly. They're just not really memorable. So here's the important piece about all of this. You are the same you. You are the same person with the same set of skills and talents and experiences who showed up in these very different work environments. In one, you were made to feel maybe valued and useful and productive and empowered. And yet you, the very same person in a different environment with the same set of skills and the same DNA, you might have been made to feel berated or belittled or not included or stressed or fearful. And if you found yourself around someone who was indifferent, you just really weren't sure how they made you feel because they really weren't influencing you one way or another. It was okay. This is at the heart of what we're talking about with this opportunity that exists here. I know that many of you have seen this quote that we've shared on this page by Dr. Maya Angelou, that people forget what you say, people might forget what you do, but people will never forget the way you make them feel. We never forget the way that these 3 people in this exercise made us feel. And all of the people with whom we interact, they don't forget the way that we make them feel. This is why emotional intelligence is so critical and crucial, because remember, 79% of employees leave their job because they don't feel appreciated. If we are not actively and intentionally treating and communicating these individuals and connecting with people in a way that does make them feel appreciated, by extension, then we're indifferent. And indifference is not neutral. Indifference is detracting from. This is part of what's going on with the Great Resignation, because the way that people feel influences all of their decisions, all of their behavior, all of their performance. And unless leaders and organizations and colleagues aren't giving people a reason to stay, they have every reason to go. So think about your organization, or think about the organizations that you serve. Who in those organizations remind you of your best? How many of them are there? Think about intentionally how those people affect productivity, retention, and engagement, and profitability, and the culture and the clients. And then think about the people that remind you of your worst. How many people are like that in these organizations, either yours or the client organizations you serve? And what's happening around them? How do they impact productivity? What's the retention or the turnover look like around them? What's engagement or disengagement look like? How profitable are they? What's that culture like? And how does that spill out into their clients? There's an ROI around how we feel. This isn't just how we feel is important. It is important. It directly impacts our performance in the workplace, our productivity. It directly impacts ROI. We saw this earlier. Companies that have high engagement are 22% more profitable. They have customer retention rates that are 18% higher. And you can bet by extension that that transfers into employee retention rates. So now I want to circle back to your okay person. Think about your organization or those you serve. Whose observable behavior is like your okay person? How many people are there? It's likely there's a big bulk of them. How are these okay or average people impacting productivity and retention, engagement, and profitability in the culture and the clients? Sometimes that's hard to answer because you see, this truly is the elephant in the room, because we think that okay is, well, okay. We think average is okay. We think that's acceptable. And the reality is, it is not. When we look at an organization, right, we have people who are on the right side of this spectrum, and we have people who are on the left side of the spectrum, and we have the biggest group of people who are average in the middle who are okay. So in the context of thinking about how people connect and communicate and collaborate, it's these people at the upper end who are really giving spectacular experiences. And it's these folks at the other end of the spectrum who are really struggling. And it's most people who are right smack in the middle. Now, if you think about your organization, those are the ones you serve like this, what you'll know is that the folks at the lower end of this spectrum get a lot of attention. These folks get coaching and often training programs. They might be on a performance improvement plan. They might have special sidebar mentoring programs to really try to work and correct some of those behaviors. Yet what we don't often think about is the folks on the right side of this bell curve. They often get little to no attention. Many times they're just simply taken for granted. Sometimes they're even taken advantage of because the understanding is that they will pick up the slack where there is slack. And they often don't get acknowledged for that spectacular performance. The biggest opportunity for growth and development in an organization is this chunk of folks right here in the middle, these okay people. These are fine people. These are good people. And they are so close to having stronger performance. Here's the deal about them. It's like they know what not to do, but they don't know what to do to move their performance and to move their ability to connect and communicate and collaborate more effectively. They don't quite know what these power skills are, and they definitely don't know how they make them stronger. Yet in any organization, there's so much opportunity here because they are so close. So just as a quick reflective question now, think about your organization. What do you currently have in place to optimize the strength of your staff or the staff of your client organizations? What are we doing to recognize strong performance? What's currently in place to identify areas and opportunities for growth and development for everyone? And what might be in the hiring process to really identify these skills before they come into the organization? Just reflect on those three questions here for a quick moment. And then I'd like you to think about the okay person who you identified. And how did they make you feel? Now, what Jeff and I have learned when we've been talking about this topic is that a lot of people will tell us, you guys, I didn't write anything down. They didn't make me feel anything. Well, that's the clear definition of indifference, right? Or we'll have folks who will say, well, they made me feel okay. It was fine. I felt good. Good is the enemy of great. Okay, fine, and good is living in this indifference. And when we think about these folks who are in this average category, again, they're good people. They know what not to do to be the worst. They're just struggling with exactly what to do to be more spectacular, to be stronger. So when you thought about your okay or these average folks, and we ask you these questions about going the extra mile and telling others how great it is to work and this positive impact on mindset and well-being, I am guessing that those scores were mid-range. Maybe 4, 5, and 6. Most commonly, we get 5s because the best gets the 10s and the 9s and the 10s, and the worst gets the 1s and the 2s. And so by extension, when you consider that, these folks land up right in the middle. Again, right in the middle with such great opportunity to only have to do a couple things different to be stronger. Because what we know, remember, 79% of the people are leaving their job because they're not appreciated. And we know that the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. That translates directly into our workplaces and into our performances. And you will see that in articles all over the place. I've been talking about this quote. It appeared in Inc. magazine. There was an article in Fast Company that was talking about moving into 2021 because of COVID and what leaders needed to do differently. But it's the contents of that article that we wanted to share with you. Listen to this. Firstly, people join companies but quit their bosses. Secondly, 35% of Americans would happily take a pay cut if they could get rid of their manager. And lastly, 1 in 2 people distrust their boss. 1 in 2 people. These are all elements of emotional intelligence. These are all elements of honing skills. And the reality is this group in the middle, these folks who are good people, and they're not yet spectacular, and they're not awful. They can be moving closer to spectacular with a little bit of effort. They are like hot water. Hot water is awesome. You can maybe make a cup of tea with hot water. You can wash your hands comfortably with hot water. You can take a shower with hot water. But if you take hot water that's 211 degrees and you add just 1 degree to it, you turn it into steam. You turn it into something completely different. And that steam can propel a locomotive forward and across the entire country. 1 degree of difference. One thing that's different. Why commit the time and the effort to kick that up by 1 degree, to help these average people kick it up? Because absolutely no one in the world wants this boss, this nameplate on their desk. Nobody wants to be the world's okayest boss or the world's okayest colleague. Okay is so close to being strong. We just have to look at it differently. So if you take the time to go back and look at these worksheets deeply when we're done, you'll see that you can rate each of those kind of statements or behaviors. You'll also see that there's a blue column there. You might want to do a little reflection and take a look at yourself. See if you rate yourself and how you're showing up. These are all demonstrated emotionally intelligent leadership and workplace behaviors. So if your okay person on that first rating of 1 to 10 was a 5 or a 6, that's a massive difference if you move them from a 5 to a 6 or a 6 to a 7. Think about that. What would it mean to improve how your people in your organization or your clients connect and communicate and collaborate from indifferent to empowering? And what you see on your screen, these are just our models, our Genos models of emotional intelligence. We actually look at indifference, and that's the unproductive side of our EI competency. When you help people know exactly what to do to connect and communicate and collaborate more effectively, you move them away from that notion of indifference, which is detracting, to empowering. When we do that, people now feel connected. They are appreciated. Their performance is stronger. This is where workplaces get stronger and individuals get stronger professionally and also personally. Now, you've heard me say that EI is connected to ROI. This is not just us saying this. This is a great statistic from Capgemini Research Institute. We know that when organizations invest in emotional intelligence, that the organization, as well as the people participating, get a big benefit. Companies can kick up their performance in productivity and efficiency. They have higher employee satisfaction. They get stronger market share. Employees have a better sense of emotional and mental well-being. They have more openness, less fear of job loss. And what we know is that organizations can achieve returns up to 4 times higher by investing in these skills that actually make their organizations more productive and more profitable, and their people more creative and basically smarter and more engaged. So herein lies the challenge. Most organizations are crystal clear on what they want from their workforces. They want stronger performance and a more effective leadership and increased sales and better customer service. And they want resilience and they want engagement. The problem is they don't exactly know how to get there. They're unsure of how to help people get there. And so the way that you can get there, because these are the very things that we specialize in, but these are things that can be measured, is we need to give people a starting point and a plan to get to an ending point. We need to measure on the hiring side. We need to measure our existing teams to see where they are, to see where they are spectacular, to see where they might be average. And then we have to craft some action plans that help them to kick up those skills, to move from a 5 to a 6, from a 7 to an 8. And then we got to coach them and train them and support them in doing that, and then let them apply that into their workspace. And then we just need to do that over and over and over again. It's a constant process of seeing where we are and kicking it up. This is no different than what we just came off the Olympics. It's no different than what Olympic athletes do. They measure their speed, they measure their time, they get an action plan for their nutrition and their hydration and their sleep. They have coaches, they have trainers who help them with all these things, and then they go out and do it. And then they keep measuring themselves and they keep going out and they keep honing those skills. This is what we can do to grow and develop. And what happens for organizations is they get all kind of collateral benefit from doing so. More engagement, psychologically safe work environments, enhanced well-being, stronger culture, better workplace performance. And remember, we get people who now feel connected and appreciated because they want to go the extra mile. They tell people how great it is to work for that person or for that company, and they have a positive impact. That company has a positive impact on their mindset and well-being. So as we round this out, I wanted you to know that average, this okay population is your biggest opportunity. They are literally hiding in plain sight for you. We can measure that. We do measure that. We measure average. You get a chance to see what average looks like, hiring or with contributors. We know what global averages look like for the demonstration of these skills that help drive connection and communication and collaboration. You can measure average. And if you can measure average, we know that this is the biggest population that organizations have. They are hot water. And with some focus and some attention, with kicking that up a degree or two, boy, you can turn them into steam. You can turn them into productive, spectacular experiences. So when you leave this session and you reflect back on what we learned, take a look at what the best and the worst and the okay people look like, because the way that leaders and staff show up, the way they demonstrate those things, the way they do it influences the way other people are made to feel. And the way other people are made to feel has a direct impact on their engagement, on their well-being, on their mindset. And I want to leave you with this. And then Aoife, maybe these are some of the questions that might be coming in. So these are the last reflection questions. So what would the competitive advantage be for your organization or your clients if all your leaders and staff demonstrated those statements or those skills like your best? Consider the people in your organization who are okay. It's the largest population. How have your thoughts changed around accepting okay performance? And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how important is it to you to focus development efforts on those leaders and staff who fall into the okay category? And is that different than what your mindset may have been when you stepped into this session? Remember that good is the enemy of great. So, how are your teams connecting and communicating and collaborating? How's that translating into culture and performance? Are you hiring for these skills? As we adjourn today, you can do those things. Okay isn't okay. Okay is right on the cusp of spectacular. You can facilitate moving in that direction. You can look at your candidates and see how these skills, what kind of skills are they bringing into your workplace. You can measure that in the hiring process. You can certainly develop these skills internally. You can measure them and create action plans and coach and train people through some of what Derek talked about at the onset through our programs. And conversely, as we close this session, the paradigm around average performance, maybe that hasn't yet shifted for you. We'd be happy to talk about what that looks like if that did shift for you. So I want to thank you for joining us today, something that Jeff and I are passionate about. I want to thank Derek and Aoife for inviting us here. And certainly any questions that have come up, we will be happy to entertain. But thank you for considering the competitive advantage that's hiding right in plain sight for organizations.
Oh, you're muted, Derek.
Thank you very much indeed, Debbie. And you know what's really interesting was looking at some of the questions and some of the questions I had. And every time I wrote down one, you answered it again. I mean, the thing that really bounds out at me is that the okay people don't get enough attention. They're the ones who are closest to the edge. Now, folks, we're right up against the wire right now, and I know some of you will be under time pressure, but we're actually going to keep this running because we've had some questions come in we really want to address for you. So if you can stay with us, super. If you can't, this will be there and recording on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and so on, so you'll be able to get them. So let me turn to Aoife and just say, how are we doing with questions, or what have we got there question-wise?
Thank you so much, Debbie. Lots of fantastic feedback in the comments. Based on what we were just saying there, though, we have a really good question from David, which I think the group would appreciate. So David says, we need to be careful not to get caught up in the challenge of everything being more important than everything else. Going back to your bell curve analogy, where to start? Appreciating the top end, working to push the middle group to steam, or work on remediating those who are disengaged? You know, what would be your recommendation on proportion of effort?
Oh, that is a really, really great question.
Yeah.
And David, thank you for asking it. I think all of it might need to be reappropriated, the time and effort, because it seems like folks at that left side of that spectrum really currently are getting a lot of attention. So I think that any effort that we begin paying to the folks who are spectacular, just the acknowledgement and the appreciation doesn't take a lot of effort. It takes intention, not a lot of effort, intention. And I think that inviting everyone on a growth and development journey benefits everyone in the ways in which they need it. So rather than segmenting, let's include everybody in that. But I would say that really dedicating effort to these folks who are so close, who right now the accepted mindset overwhelmingly is, well, they're okay, we don't need to do anything. Doing just a little bit of something can have a huge ROI. So I think if you're currently looking at how much time and effort an organization is spending and where they're spending it, can you take that same amount of time and effort and just include more people on that journey?
Perfect. Thank you, Debbie. Leonardo's asking, this is also a very good question. How can I help a leader who says, yes, I know emotional intelligence is very important. I've attended the course and I've read the book, but his or her behaviors say something else?
Yeah,
I don't know if
Jeff, you might want to pop in there.
I'm going to answer, Ava, I'm going to answer that. What we're finding are people that are okay are demonstrating, are open and honest about mistakes, just at a different level than the best, and they're doing it differently. But if you've got people in the middle that are doing things already, they, as Debbie said, they don't know what they don't know. I think there's a higher degree of receptiveness to people that are already doing and engaged in something, not opposed to it, to move in a positive direction than someone who's at the other end of it, who has to stop doing bad behaviors before they can even get to neutral. So I think when you have okay or average or fine people, I think there's a degree of receptiveness that will allow them to move in a direction at an easier clip than someone like you described that's at the other end, that's struggling, that perceives that they're doing it, that they're really not. I think when you move the needle up to average or okay, I think you're going to have a higher degree of people that will be more receptive to new ideas and behaviors.
And Leonardo, Jeff, I would hop in there. Sorry, if I was just going to tap onto the end of that. Leonardo, the worst person to ask me how I'm doing is me. And so when I heard your question, what it reminded me of is if I went out and I read a really in-depth yoga book, but I don't practice yoga every day, I'm not really enhancing my skill set. And I think that this is the quandary. I think folks feel like if we've read a book, then yeah, we learned about that topic and therefore we are. And wouldn't it be great if that were so easy? Because I would go out and read a yoga book and then a weightlifting book and then a sculpting book and then I would read a philosopher book and then I would be that. But you can't do that. You really have to be measured accurately. Where am I? Where am I doing things that are strong? Where could I be doing things stronger and more productively to give me a better outcome? Unless I measure that about myself and I invite other people to share their experiences of me, I can read every book in the world and I'm not probably going to lift my skill set that much. But if I'm measured and I have a Debbie game plan or a custom game plan, then I know exactly what to do and exactly where I need to do it. And then I can go out and really demonstrate stronger emotional intelligence.
And let me throw something in there and just say, folks, if there's anybody sitting there saying, I wonder what that looks like, let us extend, particularly because it's 5 minutes past the hour, let us extend something to you as a thank you for hanging on 5 minutes past the hour. And that is, reach out to us if you want to see what that looks like and you want to go through one of those assessments yourself. If you want to see how do people see you show up, or if you want to have one of your colleagues go through that, reach out and we'll gift that to you for spending your time with us. So Ava, thanks, Deb.
Yeah, this is fantastic questions today. So Andre is asking, what would be your approach to scale emotional intelligence into an organization with 5,000 employees if you would have maximum 3 months time? There's a challenge.
I bet all four of us would have an interesting response to that. So I'll put something out there, and then all of us can go around. In my experiences with organizations that are that size that want to have a rollout like that, the place to start is where you feel is the right place to start. What is the place that either has the most impact on your clients or your internal clients? Where might having this kind of lift, perhaps it's in sales or customer service, but it really is what feels like it's the place that makes the most benefit for you to start. And let's get started there, because that's where we want and need to see a difference. And the hunger for that kind of growth is there. And then you can just continue to scale that up, just draft out a timeline, and we just continue to add the next segment or the next department or the next division. I'm not sure my other three colleagues on this call if they would have a different idea around that.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with anything you said there, Debbie. But one of the things, if somebody's saying, how would I get 5,000 people a greater awareness of their emotional intelligence and a clear plan for what they're going to do next? One, you'd need to assess them. And they need to be assessed through the eyes of other people. Here are the behaviors I see you demonstrate. Here's the way you show up. Here are the gaps. Now, we met or we've encountered that challenge many times before, where organizations, at the last minute they say, okay, we're going to make an emotionally intelligent organization. We want to move really, really quickly. Quickest way to do that is to have a self-paced system that will take you, once you've done the assessment, take you through the process in the privacy of your own, or on the privacy of your own desktop, and take you through your report, understanding what's there, and get you to 2 or 3 action points. And as it happens, you won't be surprised, Genos have something called Genos Digital. So you could put as many people as you want through an assessment, and have them guide themselves to their own personal EI development plan on the basis of the way that the people around them see them show up. So it's really eminently doable. And again, if that's something you want to see, just reach out to us, or reach out to Aoife or Debbie, and we'll drop you some details on that. But yeah, very, very doable.
There is a link in the chat on our website. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
This is one thing I want to lead that is so important to this whole process, having worked with it night and day, that goes against everything we've learned, and everything we hear and learn about is stories and memories and compelling and exciting, which brings us to the red and the green, because that's where excitement lives in both sides, and memories. And we know how stories are huge. And the things in the middle that we don't really remember much, we stay away from. I can't stress this enough. This can be a huge competitive advantage for an organization. But as Debbie talked about, the paradigm shift, a new lens, if this is a direction, you have to really get away from the excitement for a while and put your lens on the middle, because it's almost like it's indifferent, it's not doing much. It goes against everything we've learned about stories and excitement. You almost have to go to that big area in the middle and assume it's going to be kind of quiet, but that group is just waiting there. I think that's the most important part for an organization that's doing this. You have to, for a while, put the excitement on both ends, the best and worst, and those great conversations aside, and you have to dive into things that there's not much memory there, but that's where the competitive advantage lies. You have to get to that place for it to really work. Because if you keep going back to both ends, that's where the excitement is. And to get the competitive advantage, it is a huge piece that you've got to go to the middle, and there's not very many stories. It's not exciting, but that's where the opportunity is.
Thank you, Jeff. Aoife, I'm very conscious that we're over the time, so here's what I'm going to suggest to people, because people will be wondering, like me, they'd like to continue this for a long time, and they'll be wondering when, can I run now or whatever. Obviously, it's continued to be recorded, but let's draw a line in the sand and say 5 minutes hence, we're going to say goodbye and good luck and have a great day, and offer you the opportunity to reach out with any questions that you have that we can follow up on afterwards. So, Aoife, do you want to select one or maybe 2 questions from the chat there?
Sure. I was just going to add one point to that last conversation as we close it off. I know personally, being in the position of being in a leadership role and also being in an individual contributor role, you know, and I'd like to think I was always a top performer, but I'm sure there's a time where I was in that okay bracket as well. I think something that's been really powerful is when organizations don't just invest their time and money on the leadership training. So you're taking your leaders and your team through the same type of training so that it's almost creating this level of stickiness, you know, so everyone is using the same term. So whether it's emotional intelligence or some other kind of training, you have a consistent language that you're rolling out across the board. And then people understand when this person is doing something differently, that's awareness of others. She's paying more attention. She's doing this or that. So I would just add that piece that I think is really, really important if you want to see that shift and move everyone to the top performer side of things. Lots of fantastic feedback coming in. Jen's sharing that she would start with the leaders, as leaders drive the culture. So she would definitely start with department heads. Thanks for all the great insights and perspectives. And I think we had one other question here from John, and that is, what have you experienced? Sorry, let me start again. What have you experienced is the most noticeable impact of EI development in team members, or is it different for everyone? That's a big, hairy one.
That's a big, hairy, wonderful one, because the impact is on so many levels. There is this initial feeling. I'll just give you my own experience. My initial feeling when I began on this journey was like someone had lifted the blinds up for me. I finally was able to see ways in which I could communicate and collaborate and connect with people in a way that was so much more productive and effective. And the greatest thing about that for me was I didn't have to do anything else additionally. I was already talking to people. I already had relationships with people. I just did them slightly differently for a much more productive, rewarding impact and effort. And so, I think that people are impacted personally when they go through this material, which in turn has them impacting, of course, professionally, because they're learning it in the professional environment. So they will communicate differently with their teammates and with their leaders and with their direct reports and with other department heads. It's almost like you look at every conversation and every interaction through a different lens. And the last point that I'll make, because others might want to respond to this, is not everyone needs to develop in the same areas, and not everyone has the same set of strengths. And so it is, while it's always a productive and profound experience, it's different for each person and each team because it's so personally based upon who they are. So outcome, productive and positive, but really how it works, the profoundness of it is unique, I think, to each individual and team. I don't know, you all might have something on top of that too.
Well, on that, thank you very much. And I know that this could run and run and run, but at some stage, the LinkedIn link is going to cut us. So I want to make sure that it doesn't go, you know. Debbie, Jeff, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And you can see from the responses coming in there, the questions coming in there, there's a lot of interest in the topic, folks. This, you can reach out to us and you can reach out to Debbie directly. You'll find us obviously on LinkedIn. You'll find the conversation that we've had already underneath the recording, which is going to live forever where you've just been watching it. So don't hesitate to reach out. If you want to give a test drive and just see what this whole thing looks like, reach out on that. So thank you to our guests. Thank you, Aoife. Thank you to all of you for staying on 15 minutes beyond the time. I'm just going to flick here for a moment. I just want to remind you of this one. Again, it may not be you. Maybe you have no aspirations ever to be on the standing on the red dot. But if you do, and if it's something that's in the back of your mind, this is the single best opportunity. I tell you, search YouTube, search everywhere else. You will not find a session where you got 4 organizers or curators for TEDx telling you how to get on the stage. It's a dynamite one to make. Week after next. If you sign up, Aoife has already put in a link that lets you register. We'll remind you. If you want to, you can use the QR code. But on that, thank you. Thank everybody. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Thanks,
Aoife.
Derek.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody. Really, really appreciate you. Take care,
Good to
folks.
see you, folks. Bye.
Bye.